name is Tatiana Cohen. In our podcast, I discuss different topics with one approach, human-centered orientation for all my guests, promote with different advice for our audience. And today we will discuss topic which I really like. It's topic about two things. The first thing is communication, and the second is very, very important. It's trust. It's a trust, authenticity, which I think we need to bring in our daily professional life. And my guest today is Jenn. Hi, Jenn.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks, and happy to see you today. And before we are starting our conversation, please could you share with my audience your professional background, your professional experience? I'm absolutely sure without our conversation, we will want to follow you on LinkedIn, and you could find the connection with you on my LinkedIn page. But please, could you make a short self-introduction?
Sure, I can make it short and sweet. And thank you for having me. Yeah, my name is Jenn, and I really live at the intersection of communications and social impact. I've helped launch brands and partnerships. I helped launch Lululemon in the US. I've worked with Ben & Jerry's, the Bosch Community Fund, the Robotics Education and Competition Foundation. And really, it's all about advancing the missions of these wonderful organizations and brands and founders. And so they get really clear with their messaging, and they gain more visibility and partnerships to make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm. Jenn, thanks a lot for joining this conversation about trust and communication. And firstly, I want to ask you about trust. Now I've heard a lot of words. What they have a problem with trust or our institution, trust or our leaders in organization, trust to organization from our employees, trust to organization from a customer side. So could you share your points of view on this topic? What trust? Is it important, not important? What problem we have now, and maybe which opportunities do they have now?
Trust is at the cornerstone of any business. If you are one person and you're a founder, if you have hundreds of thousands of employees, and really it's a non-negotiable, and it's something that every organization, brand should be leading by. And it's really alignment between your behavior and the words, right? And so if you're behaving one way and your words are different, then there's not alignment, and that just causes confusion. And I would say to everyone, don't underestimate the human capacity to understand what's happening. Like, people are smart, and it's really important to have the clarity and communicate with clarity. It doesn't have to be perfect or super polished. People are really gravitating to being human and just authentic, right? So also, it's really consistency over time. It's not a one-off moment. It's a trust and authenticity is something that should be in your company's ethos and something that you live every moment of every day.
I think what trust is really very important in the tough times when you have different type of crisis. It's really important to have trust. Because we need it. And as you say, its authenticity is a core idea of building the trust. Could you share your approach? What could you recommend to the companies which want to promote themselves like employers, for example, for the employees? Or what could you recommend to leaders? How to really understand you and your authenticity, and how keep this authenticity in different situations when they build their communication?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And, when companies are going through a difficult time or not, and the world is unsettling at best right now, is really to lead a few things. One is to lead with context, right? People fear what they don't understand. And I would offer a plan through it. And sometimes you don't have all the information at the moment, and that's okay. And I would recommend leaders to say, I don't have all the information right now. I am going to seek that, and I will come back to you with an answer. At least they know that leadership is basically kind of quote unquote on it. And there's a trust that they will come back and kind of lead the way. And the more you have communication consistently during uncertain times, really helps reduce anxiety, and it helps people fill in the gaps in case of a worst case scenario, right? People, you don't want start people thinking about a story or a narrative that might be happening, which it may not be happening. So having clear conversations, communications on a regular basis. And I would tell that. I think that once you communicate, if a leader says, look, I'm going to give you an update every Monday or every Friday, stick to that. And then that's your cadence, right? And it keeps everyone on the same page, and it makes everyone feel comfortable about a situation. And I would even go one step further. Even if you're not having difficult times or a period of transition, it's good to have a cadence of communication, because you are your best when people are all on the same page.
Sometimes when I remember what we discussed with one of my guests, the situation about communication, corporate communication, they mostly focus on employer branding. And we discussed that usually companies prefer polished communications, very polite communications, it's clear from one side, but it's absolutely the same with other communications. It's difficult to find the real voice of the company. So we try to be better than usually. So what could you recommend now for the companies that the trends in communication now influence the trust to this communication?
Yeah, that's such a great question. You know what? I recommend people slowing down, right? Every culture, every company or nonprofit I work with, the culture is a little bit different, right? So you kind of have to sit and see what that is. But obviously, if you're in it, then I would see how people like to get information. Is it just Slack? Is it like town halls? Is it in person? And back to the in person, I think that that is the best way of having, really connecting with someone, walking down the halls, having like a Zoom call, and just saying, and ask questions that are not so pre-screened. I would even ask questions that are just kind of open-ended, right? Tell me about where you sit in the world, and what what are you feeling? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? How do you see a path forward? What are we missing here, right? Oftentimes people ignore the folks that are in the front lines of, like, the people that are working with customers. Those are your most important people, right? Because you want to make sure that you are listening to the people that are, your loyalty, your fan base, your community, right? And it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just it's an intentional way, either each quarter or maybe it's monthly, depending how big your company is, to really listen, respond, and follow through.
Mhm. And times to times, it's also continuous these questions. Times to times, we are looking what the companies try to avoid all the risks in the communication, inside and outside. It could lead us to the situation that our language is not
Hmm.
human. It's
Hmm.
and they start to sound like an organization, not like a human. Uh, and I see what now it's not only outside organizations, also inside organization. What is the right balance between
Hmm.
avoiding the risks and other side to stay human? And what the human side could you recommend to add to your communication for keeping authenticity, for building the trust?
Yeah, I think a few things. One, lead with honesty, right? Even when the news isn't good. Admit uncertainty. The false confidence can destroy credibility. Show the why behind your decisions. And maybe sometimes you can't communicate all that, and I get that. Um, but I think all to say here is that people don't expect perfection. They expect honesty and a path forward. And so and people can tell if you're intentional, right? If you're asking them for their feedback, and you're acting upon that, and recognizing maybe the best ideas are coming from people that you least expect, right? And I think that leaders that are so true to this type of mindset really showcases what happens outside the company, because then you start building a brand, because your employees, if it's 10, 20, 30,000, they're really your advocates, right? Because everyone works, but everyone goes off, right? You live your life, you go out with friends, you go out in the world, And, where do you work? Do you like it? Tell me about it. So you want those conversations because those multiply.
And then my next question is about AI. Now we
Mm.
start to use AI very frequently in our communication, especially it's about writing communication. What is your recommendation to the company? Stay human or using AI, or how to use AI? Because AI, it's usually people who prepare some content said it's more interesting. It's a way it's usually corporate communicate, so it helps me to make my communication because the human usually have a lot of imperfection in our communication, a
Mhm.
lot of mistakes, a lot of pauses, especially for example, when we talk. What is your recommendation?
For where I sit, because I do a lot of writing each week, and I don't start with AI ever. I end with it. So my process is that I love having the conversations, right? I want to hear the impact. I want to hear the storytelling. I want to hear about the journeys, the good, the bad, the ugly. How did they get there? And then I like to write everything like the old-fashioned way, and then I will leverage AI to help polish it or maybe fill in gaps. I have prompts where I want to make sure that I'm really nailing the introduction and making sure that I'm setting the tone. But I think I think AI to certain capacities is wonderful, and it helps streamline your thoughts, right? And it speeds up the way you work. But ultimately, the soul, the heart and soul of anything you write is something that has to come from here and here.
A lot of times, you during our conversation use the word about questions. So I
Mm.
want to talk about communications from above, the issue from above sides. And firstly, when we start to talk about communications, we start to think about it, communication from leaders or from company to the one side to the employees, or from leader to the team. But usually, for building a communication, we also need to hear the voice of our audience. What could you recommend to company who want to build really two-side communications, want really to build a conversation, how to build it, and how to use this conversation for improving lives and improving communication?
Yeah, I would say be fearless and ask what your customers or consumers are thinking about. What do they love about your product or service? What can you do better? Is there something that's not working, or is it could be the product, but also could be like the delivery, right? The shipping, what have you, the communications. Um, we do a lot of work where you do a survey, right? If you're the touch point afterwards is like, how can this be better, right? And you can make it anonymous, right? So people don't know and they don't feel like you're hurting anyone's feelings. And so I would take that information, I would really listen to it. And then I would look for patterns to see if there's common things that are coming up. And then if you have two or three things that are coming up, good or bad, lean into them, communicate that more. Or if you're having issues, so say if you're having a shipping problem, you're saying it's going to be there 3 days, but it's always getting there 6, 10 days afterwards, and people are expecting it. You need to figure that out from an operation side, right? Or for your shipping vendor or what have you. So I think it's just reverse engineering, and to not only look at the good comments, but also the comments of where you can improve more.
Mhm. That's also my next questions and continues. I also had meeting with one expert in feedback. In
Hmm.
different culture, we have a different situations back. I know what in US the culture is, I think, a really direct culture. So
Right.
you could give the feedback and you could use the feedback. But usually it's really difficult for us to accept it.
Hmm.
But what could you recommend to the company, to the leaders? How to work this feedback is about for giving feedback and for accepting feedback, and how to use it as a source for your development, and how to give it for how to give feedback. Also, the goal, what it helps other person, a team, to to really increase something, not just looking like critics.
Right.
What?
I would say knowledge is power, right? Like if something's going wrong, I would address it and not ignore it, right? And I would even go one step further is that if you have an issue with your business, right, and you ask for this feedback, maybe take your followers or your customers along for the journey, right? We heard from you that this was an issue or we need to improve. And this is what we did to make your shopping experience better, right? Everyone loves a journey, right? And then for the folks that made that comment, right? Or even thought about it and didn't say anything because they felt like they were going to hurt someone's feelings, then it's a signal that you're being listened to and that the company is willing to fix it and make it right. And at the end of the day, this is a very competitive world, right? Everyone's vying for marketplace, for shares, for what have you. So why not be the best? And by listen to those who are actually using your product or service, right? There's no better case study than the one. And even if you don't want to make this public, then I would say if you didn't want to put it on social media, then send it on an email, right? It could be just an email exchange, a one-on-one connection saying, hey, we heard your feedback and this is what we're going to do to correct it. Thank you so much for going along this journey to making this X product as best as it can be.
Mm-hmm. And I want to ask my next question is about main narratives and about stories that your company want to tell to other employees. Because times to times it's really the best way to communicate if you not just only tell just facts or something information and without addition and emotions. What could you recommend a company? What is the right balance? How to use the main narratives and adding stories, adding emotions for improving the effectiveness of communications?
Yeah. So two-part for the conversation. One, just get close to how your customers want to get the information. Some people just want text, some want email, social media. Make sure you know what channels are the best ones, and there's probably a couple. But to directly answer your question, in my world, impact dominates, right? It's all about storytelling, about the emotions, about how you're making the world a better place through your product or service, right? And I would get really close to those folks that have seen a change. You've made their life better. And it doesn't have to be long and drawn out, just even quick testimonials, right? About their experience. And what happens is that when you start collecting this testimonies and feedback, then you gain a library, right, of positive feedback. And then it showcased to the next folks that might be getting familiar with your brand. It signals like, oh, wow, they have 5,000 5 stars, right? It just showcases that their product or service is worth their money. So I would be bold with the impact, with the journey, telling the stories, getting close to the customers or to the end users about how you made a difference with their purchase or service.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you also about imperfection. In some
Yeah.
cultures, it's really very difficult to be
Yeah.
imperfect.
I know.
But from a perspective of happiness, it's really we have a wonderful book of Tal Ben Shahar about imperfection as a way for um, happiness, for becoming more happier. What recommendation could you give the companies for being more imperfect, but
I
achieving
know.
their goals?
Oh, I love this. I love this. And I have to say, I am a perfectionist and I have high standards. So I really resonate with this question. But I also will say that there's something endearing with everything that's happening with AI and everything is like so kind of perfect and what have you, is that even seeing like a typo now, like what would bother me 5 years ago, seeing a typo, it kind of signals to me that it's not AI, right? So I actually like almost seeing something that's not perfect or not capitalized or what have you, because I know that unless they have a really good prompt, an AI prompt, that someone human is behind it, right? And I think when you speak from the heart and you're clear about it, that's the best connection. And also too, people are people are visual. Most people are visual, and people just don't have much time to absorb it. People are moving too quickly, right? So if you can say something from your heart and go directly and bold right to it quickly, that's the best combination. If it's robotic and it sounds too much like AI, people just gloss right over it, right? Or if it has a lot of jargon, no jargon, like no acronyms, like keep it really direct, really clear, and speak from the heart.
Mhm. Absolutely agree with you. What speaking from the heart is much more important than the
Mhm.
brilliant words, but without any emotion, without soul.
Right.
Jen, our next question is about channels. You also mentioned what we need to look for different channels, and what recommendation could you give a company, especially in the situation with the limitation of resources? Because it could be great if you have a lot of resources for a lot of channels.
Right.
So, but the reality usually a little bit different. What
Mm.
recommendation could you give companies? Which channel should they use? How to use it? How understand the effectiveness? How improve effectiveness? How test maybe something new and so on? What is your recommendation?
Yeah, this I have this conversation almost daily, in so many different ways, and because how so many there's been like 150% increase of people using Chat GPTs, Claudes of the world. And your website is the home base for all your communications, right? It's Signal AI pulls information from your website. So if you are strapped for time, I would make sure that your website is looking really great in sense of it tells succinctly what you do and how you do it and why you do it with purpose. And going one step further to what we just talked about, that feedback that you gain from your customers about the impact, about the product or service, put that on a news page on your website, right? And then what you can do is take that information and make it into bite-sized, easy to read. So you can put that in social media. You can send that through text, through emails, right? It becomes a content engine for you, and it helps from an AI and search engine perspective to get your messages across. So when people are searching for, I don't know, the best computer for my middle school student, if you're a computer company, that information's, popping up because AI is moving is faster than we are, and they're just pulling information. And also, too, another signal for folks is making sure that you are doing media. Um, so you're getting media attention for either yourself from a thought leadership perspective or for your product or services. And that could be your local media, trade, what have you, because it's two different ways that AI looks to see and verifies who you are and then pulls you up in a search.
Mhm. It's really, really important. And I want to add one question about consistency. As you said, the focus on the channel and also how to work with orientation of AI because it's a new reality for us, for all of
Right.
us. So now working in communication, I want to ask you about consistency.
Mm.
What is the best way to achieve this consistency in your communication, and what elements of this consistency should they include in all other communication?
Right. If there's so many different scenarios to this, but if it's like a normal kind of nothing, there's no crisis or what have you, you just steady. I would keep consistent would be at least multiple times a week through different ways. So if that's social media, if it's email, it's texting, um, you want to make sure that I know that, life happens and, people get sick and, you need to take time off or whatever, but that's more from a founder. If you have a communications department or a marketing team, there's really no reason why you can't be communicating. There's so much that you can be talking about your company, brand, or service. And how you can like think about it is break it down into like three focus areas, right? Like who you are, the purpose, why, the product, the benefits, right? And then lean into it, right? And then I liked with my clients, I like breaking things down into quarterly, so 90-day plans, right? So for the next 90 days, we're going to be talking about these three things, but we're going to talk about it in all different types of ways, right? And then use your data to see who's opening your emails, who's going to your website. Are you getting followers? Are you getting engagement on your social media? And that data helps inform the next 90 days of your plan. I always like to do the 80-20 rule. 80% it's kind of tried and true, and then 20% of trying new ways to communicate your value. And then see if it resonates. If it works, great, continue on. If not, try a different direction. So that gives you kind of like a conservative way to be have that cadence, but have being the boldest to try new things of how to get your messages out, maybe to people, new populations.
My next question, which I really very like, sometimes it's difficult to discuss. It's about mistakes. But I think it's really important to hear about mistakes. And what three common mistakes could you mention if they talk about authentic and trustful communication?
Yeah, I think a few things. If you're like kind of summing this up, I think if your culture is aligned and they know its purpose, right, and you believe in your goals and people have that mission, people come along with it, right? That's for internal or external. I think consistency, as we talked about, compounds over time. And it's another extension to building your brand loyalty. And I really think having the direct conversations and gaining that feedback along the way not only helps with building trust, but also helps with really resonating with your customers and and gaining more people, right? Because you want more people to come into your community. And don't be afraid to ask questions. And it's okay when things are not working because it's just a signal to you that you need to shift, right? And we're all growing. And I think that's the kind of the overarching message here is that AI looks so polished, and it's okay. Like being a human is messy, right? There's messy middles parts of your, different parts of the season that you're in, right? And I think when you're authentic and you're clear and you're taking people along for the journey, that makes that connection just so much more meaningful.
Jenn, time is kind of so fast, and my last questions for you is also the usual for all my guests. Is this question about three main tips which you could give to all people in our audience who want to build or improve their communications? Three main tips.
One, I would have a message guide, one page that showcases all your core messaging that is really the North Star, and it works as part of your whole ecosystem, right? It's something that you go back to. It's opened on your computer at all times. So if you're answering an email or if you're doing anything with the marketing, everyone has the same message. If you have one person, a VA, or a team of 20, it all is so core. I've probably created hundreds of different message guides from every company that you could ever think of, from product launches to campaigns. So that is one thing I would like definitely do. Two is clarity, making sure that you have really, really clear, not a lot of jargon, making sure that you're speaking from the heart, and just being consistent. It's not a one moment. You don't want to just kind of be really active this month and then take tomorrow or the following weeks off, right? Humanity makes all the difference, and it makes you memorable.
Jenn, thanks a lot for this wonderful conversation. Thanks a lot for joining my podcast, Happy at Work.
Oh, it's my honor. It's such a great conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks a lot. And this is podcast Happy at Work. My name is Tatiana Kovac. Stay connected.